Hello and welcome to Tazori Home. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make the perfect sourdough loaf. I learned how to make sourdough from my sister-in-law. Shout out to Isabel, I owe you everything. About 2 to 3 years ago, and it was the best decision I have ever made in my life next to following Jesus and marrying my husband. So that's all I have to say on that. Nothing feels more homey, in my opinion, than freshly baked bread. And this is going to revolutionize your life and add so much joy to you. So I'm getting off my soapbox and we're gonna get to making sourdough bread. Let's go. The first step with making sourdough is feeding your starter. Starter is a mixture of flour and water. I don't really know the details. I'm just here to tell you how to do it. The science you can look up on Google. If you don't have sourdough starter, I would suggest first asking a friend or family member who has starter to have some of theirs. If that's not an option for you, I put a link in the description below with someone explaining how to make your own starter. I also have seen people selling their starter on Facebook Marketplace, so if you're feeling a little adventurous, that's an option for you as well. I got the sourdough starter from my friend who got it from another friend who got it from another friend from another friend, and so on and so forth. So they say the older the starter is, the better. So first step, as I said, is feeding your starter. I already did this last night, so you can see it's nice and bubbly. It has doubled in size from what it was last night. So you're gonna feed your starter equal parts flour and water. So you're gonna need a kitchen scale for this. I add 120 grams of flour and 120 grams of water, and then you mix it together until it has sort of a peanut butter-like consistency. So it's dripping down the spoon, but it's not falling off. It should be a little bit thicker, like thick peanut butter. Now you might need to add a little bit more flour to get that peanut butter-like consistency. So don't be afraid to go outside of the measurements that I gave you for the sake of getting the right quality for your starter. Once that's mixed together, you're gonna leave it to rest outside in a warm spot. I usually leave mine on my windowsill. And then in the morning, it should be nice and bubbly and should have doubled in size. Now, depending on the temperature in your home and different conditions, your starter might quote unquote eat through the flour and water faster than you expect, and you might come in the morning to look at your starter and see that it has fallen down again. So it rises, it eats through, and then it'll like fall back down if you don't catch it in time. If that's the case, I would suggest feeding your starter in the morning and just keeping an eye on it to see when it has doubled in size and gotten nice and bubbly, and then start the process of making your sourdough at that point. Now, since that's beside us, you have your active sourdough starter. Now it's time to mix together all the ingredients to make your loaf. You're going to grab your kitchen scale, you're gonna turn it on, and you're gonna make sure that it is set to grams. You're gonna place your bowl on your kitchen scale. Then you're gonna press tare so that it is at 0, and this is when you're gonna add all your ingredients. First, what you're gonna put in is 700 grams of water. Too much. I always overdo it. Now, you're going to mix in your sourdough starter. You're gonna wanna put 200 grams of starter in here. The more starter you use, the more sour it is. So I would say start with 200 grams. And if it feels like it's not sour enough, you can add more next time. If it's too sour, you can add less. So you're gonna put 200 grams. Now, if your starter is healthy and active, it should float in the water. So it should not sink to the bottom. If it's sinking to the bottom, your starter is not in the place it needs to be to make sourdough. So start again. Cover your starter, it's going back in the fridge. Next up, we're gonna add 20 to 40 grams of salt. I just use pink Himalayan salt, and I usually do 30 grams. I'm gonna tare it again, and this is when we're gonna put in our flour. So again, I'm using King's Arthur all-purpose flour. This one works really well for me. 1,000 grams of flour. Now, the nice thing about this recipe I'm giving you is it makes 2 loaves. So 1 for you and 1 for a friend. Don't be selfish. Now you have all your ingredients in the bowl. We're gonna roughly mix it together. I use my rubber spatula and we're just gonna do a rough mix. Just a reminder, I usually feed my starter at night. It's doubled in size and bubbly in the morning, and then I would do this part in the morning around like 7 or 8 a.m. and then continue the process, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can do a different timing setup. You'll get the feel for it. So I usually like to make sure that all the flour is incorporated, but the dough is not gonna look like, it's not gonna look nice. It's just gonna look shaggy, and that's how it should. So, see that? That's what we want it to look like, shaggy dough. Now we're gonna cover this with a tea towel. We're gonna leave it in a warm spot to rise, and we're gonna wanna let it sit here for at least 30 minutes up to 2 hours. And then we're gonna start our stretch and fold. So, let's do it. Now, when you stretch and fold, what you're gonna do is pull from the outer corner of the dough and up and bring it to the other side. You're gonna twist the bowl around clockwise and do the same thing about 10 times. Then you're gonna cover your bowl with a tea towel and you're gonna leave it in a warm spot until your next stretch and fold. You're going to want to stretch and fold your dough around 7 times throughout the day, and each of these stretch and folds should be at least 15 minutes apart. I usually do mine every 45 minutes or so. You'll notice that with each stretch and fold, your dough will become tighter and more elastic and more consistent. So though in the beginning when you're doing your stretch and folds, the dough can tend to fall apart, it's going to become more uniform the more stretch and folds you do. Once you do your final stretch and fold, you're gonna wanna cover your bowl with a tea towel and leave it in a warm spot to rise over the next few hours until it's doubled in size. So just to give you an idea, I typically do my stretch and folds until around 4 or 5 p.m. and then I leave the dough to rise, and it usually is doubled in size around 10 p.m. and that's when I do the next portion of this, which is forming my loaves. That sounded weird. Forming the loaves. Now, I have prepped for us this already, so I didn't have to wait all day to do this part. That's the magic of preparation. Voila! Look, as my dough is doubled in size. Look at my dough. It is doubled in size. I'm gonna work on my French accent. I don't know what the heck that was, but you see this? It's doubled in size. It's nice and jiggly. Oh my gosh. This is why I love bread. It's just so fun. Okay, this is personally my favorite part. I know a lot of people love to score the bread, but forming the loaves is so fun to me. So we are going to lightly dust our surface with flour. Make sure it's clean. I did. Okay. Now, we're gonna take the dough out with our hand onto the surface. As I told you earlier, this recipe is giving you 2 loaves. So we're gonna split it down the middle. I have a fancy little cutter that my sister-in-law gave me, but not necessary. You can just use a knife. We're gonna put 1 dough half in the bowl. And we're gonna start with our first loaf. So for forming the loaves, the first thing you're gonna do is pull the dough from the outer edge and bring it into the center. And you are gonna do this over and over until it forms a little tight ball. Now you're gonna notice some bubbles throughout. Those bubbles are good. Try to keep those bubbles intact as much as you can, because that's what's gonna make a really nice, bubbly center, spongy, like this bubble. I'm probably gonna have to do away with that one. Oops, okay. Now you're gonna flip over the dough and you're gonna do a little scoop move. I like to call it the scoop move. You're gonna have your hands at the top with your pinkies kind of resting against the dough, and you're gonna pull the dough towards yourself. You're gonna notice that it's gonna like tighten the skin, I don't like that word, but it's gonna like tighten the dough, and you're gonna notice as you pull it towards yourself, it's going to help to form that loaf and make it tighter. So then you're gonna flip it clockwise and you're gonna do the same thing. And you're just gonna put it up front and scoot it towards yourself over and over until it feels nice and tight. You don't want to overdo this. I have a problem. I love the scoot move. It makes me really happy. And so I tend to overdo it. So I think I might be overdoing it now. All right. Look at this beautiful little loaf of bread. So the next step is you're gonna grab one of your bowls that you set aside and you're gonna put a tea towel in. You're gonna lightly dust it with flour. Then you're gonna take your loaf and you're gonna flip it upside down into the bowl, cover it like this. Then you're gonna grab a plastic bag or a bag of sorts. Sometimes I use a canvas bag. You're gonna stick it in there and you're going to tie a knot to seal it off. And you're gonna stick this in your fridge to then chill out in there, literally, overnight. And then your loaf will be ready to make the next day. You can also leave your dough in the fridge for longer than just overnight, but you're gonna wanna make sure to bake that dough before it's been in there 6 days. Like no more than 6 days should it be in the fridge. After that point, the dough goes sour, like not good sour, and it just loses its, like all the good spongy goodness. Now with that, the longer you leave it in the fridge, it does get more sour. So if you like your dough a little more sour, you can leave it in there a couple days. If you like it less sour, then you can bake it the next day. Anyways, I'm gonna put this aside and do our second loaf. So now you have left the dough in the fridge at least overnight, and now you are ready to bake your bread. I have prepped some loaves for us, so we're gonna be able to do this part right now, but you're gonna wanna put down a sheet of parchment paper, and then you're gonna take your dough, flip it right side up, because remember we flipped it upside down when we put it into the bowl, and we're gonna set it on top of our parchment paper. Before we score the dough, you wanna make sure to preheat your oven to 500 degrees Fahrenheit with your Dutch oven in there heating up. Now that the oven is preheating, it's time to score the dough. So you wanna get some flour back out, and you're going to dust the surface with flour. You're gonna wanna be pretty generous with the amount of flour you put on top here, because the more you put on top, the more clear the designs will come out. Now, if you're not sure what kind of design to do, I highly recommend checking out Pinterest for this. There's so many beautiful designs. It might take a couple times to get used to it. I'm still exploring with scoring. That rhymed. I have my little razor blade. You can get fancy scoring tools, but essentially a razor blade will do just fine. Scoring is not just for the beauty, it's also to be able to help the steam escape from the bread, and it creates a really nice crust. So while it is beautiful, it's also functional. So if you don't have scoring tools, it's okay. Just use your knife to make some lines and be able to let the steam come out. I'm gonna do one deep cut on the side here. You wanna have like at least 1 or 2 deeper cuts to really help that steam escape. That didn't happen too smoothly, but that's okay. And then we'll do some leaf design. I'll do a slightly less deep line, and then we'll do these little lines here to be the leaves. Once your oven is preheated, you're gonna put this in the Dutch oven to bake for 20 to 22 minutes on 500. So let's do just that. After that time's up, you're gonna take your Dutch oven out, take off the lid, and then lower the oven to 450 degrees, and you're gonna bake for another 8 to 10 minutes until golden brown without the lid on. While the first loaf is finishing in the oven, I'm gonna work on designing my second loaf. And right now it's October while I'm filming this, so I'm going to make a pumpkin-shaped loaf. It's really fun during the holidays to do fun designs and shapes, and so you can really get creative with this. So I'm gonna get creative. So what you're gonna need is some string to do this, and you're gonna cut 8 pieces of string. You're gonna do it about that long. 4 pieces of string, not 8. So you're going to wrap the string around your dough, flip it, and you're gonna tie it so that it's like pretty snug, not super tight, because it's going to expand in the oven, but like just gently pulling in the sides of the dough. Then you're gonna put another one to make a cross. Maybe put some flour, dust the parchment paper with some flour to make this process a little bit easier. And then you're gonna snip off the excess string. Okay, now it's pretty lopsided, so we're gonna just fix the proportions, and you wanna make sure that all the strings are meeting in the center. It's time to score. And voila! Now it's time to switch out the loaves. Beautiful. Oh, that is a good loaf. Hello, gorgeous. Even more perfect. Well, I have 2 beautiful sourdough loaves here. I'm going to now finish the pumpkin loaf. All you're gonna wanna do is flip that and take the strings off. They like to get stuck in there, so you're gonna have to pull. She's a teensy bit lopsided, but she's cute. Then, to finish her off, you grab a cinnamon stick. Oh my gosh. The amount of joy that this brings me, that bread brings me, that sourdough bread brings me. I know it's gonna be so tempting once that bread comes out of the oven to just dig in, but you must let the dough rest for at least 30 minutes. If you cut into the dough right away, it's gonna smush it down, make it like stodgy and lose all those like air bubbles inside. So trust me when I say wait at least 30 minutes. Get yourself some nice Irish butter, Kerrygold butter for the side, or a really nice olive oil with fresh herbs, balsamic vinegar. Oh my goodness, guys. I hope that this tutorial was helpful for you. I hope that you decide to embark on this journey. You will not regret it. And if you do make a sourdough loaf, please post it to your Instagram, tag us. I would love to see it and repost it and see your creations. With the holidays coming up, this is the perfect thing to make for your Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas dinner and all the things. And it's also such a wonderful gift to be able to drop on your neighbor's doorstep. I'm putting all the details of how to make this sourdough down in the description below. Please let me know if you have any questions at all. I now release you to your sourdough journey. See you in the next one. Oh my gosh, I wish you could smell this right now. Beautiful. Just beautiful.